What have I changed my mind about? And in Q&A Plus, how do we know telescopes are actually taking pictures? All in this question show. It's time for the question show. Your questions, my answers. As always, wherever you are across my channel, if a question pops in your brain, just write it down. I'll gather them up and I will answer them here. This episode is special because somebody asked me a question about changing your mind. What stuff have I been following over 27 years of science journalism that has caused me to change my mind? And it was a sort of long journey as I started to think about it and give a proper answer. And so it is an answer that takes up this entire episode of the question show. So just one question, one answer, but I hope you enjoy the conversation, and I would love to hear your thoughts, stuff that has changed your mind. All right, let's get into the question. Paige Potter, what's the last thing about space that you changed your mind about? You know, I try to stay pretty flexible and unopinionated about most things in space. So if you told me that dark matter isn't real, I'd be like, okay. Like if there was evidence that the observations for dark matter turned out that it wasn't a particle, that it was just bad observations, you know, if dark energy wasn't real, or if the Big Bang was like any of this kind of stuff, like if there was evidence to show that this thing is different, then I will change my mind immediately. Are there UFOs? You know, if someone shows me evidence of a UFO, I will change my mind overnight. So almost everything that you could present to me as a scientific question, it's really just the weight of the evidence. And that is the way most people who think about science think that way. You know, it is people who have built up their beliefs without a pillar of evidence, who will then hang on to those beliefs despite evidence that is counter to it. You know, it's very easy for a person who believes in evidence to have their opinion swayed. You just need more evidence. You know, here's the amount of evidence that for the thing that you used to believe, and here's the amount of evidence for the thing that you now believe. Done. Easy peasy. So I would say the last big thing that I changed my mind about was, should human beings live on Mars? When I started Universe Today back in 1999, 27 years ago, I was working at a web design company in Vancouver. That was my career, building websites for banks and power companies and things like that in Vancouver, Canada, and had sort of done a series of worked at software companies and stuff. But I was sort of feeling disconnected from the things that I'd always loved. And one of those was space. I'd, you know, had a telescope as a kid, really into science fiction, and used to like read books about space. And I was reading Pale Blue Dot by Carl Sagan and The Case for Mars by Robert Zubrin. And I was just completely inspired. You know, Robert Zubrin makes a compelling case that humans should go to Mars. And I was like, yeah, we should go to Mars. And I was getting my dad to read the book and my wife to read the book. And I wouldn't shut up about how humans should go to Mars and how easy it would be. And there would, you know, you could, and if they stayed on Mars, then it would be even cheaper. And, you know, here's the cost. And Zubrin breaks it all down for you. And, you know, I'm not alone. I know that Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos were also totally fascinated, inspired, obsessed with the exploration of Mars and just human space exploration in general. And I kind of resolved at that moment that I would play some part in humanity's exploration and movement out into the solar system to live on Mars. And then I learned more about how hard it is and the actual challenges and how the kinds of things that you thought were going to be there, the various reasons why we would want to go live on Mars, they evaporated. And I was left with nothing. I was, you know, and I think it's a very similar experience to people who lose their religion, that they grow up in some religious household and they're taught these kind of religious ideas. And then you start to become aware of other arguments, other ideas. And then at a certain point, you're like, I kind of don't need this anymore. And it is sort of, it's still part of your programming, part of your sort of core beliefs of who you are, and yet you no longer sort of instinctually believe that that's what the future of humanity has. Like I was absolutely, if you'd rolled out Elon Musk's plans for colonizing Mars when I was 25 years old, 30 years old, I would be all in. I attended a Mars Society conference as a journalist, but still, I was pretty excited to go. And now my position is very different. A lot of people have a hard time with it when they hear me say it, because, I think that humanity should definitely go to Mars. People should walk on the surface of Mars as a sort of, that's what's next for space exploration. That we should have a research base on Mars in the same way that we have a research base in Antarctica. We should have a research base on the moon. But I don't think humanity was meant to live on Mars. Humanity was meant to live on Earth. Earth is the perfect environment for us. I also think that human space exploration is inevitable, that we will colonize the solar system, but I don't think Mars is the place we'll do next. I think we'll probably just colonize space itself, space stations, because gravity wells are for suckers. And it's funny to see, like, a lot of the people who were sort of in that same realm as me having that same sort of personal crisis. I know Cody's lab about a year ago put a video where it's like, I kind of don't think humans should colonize Mars anymore. And Cody is, developing technology in the desert for humans to live on Mars. And was one of the finalists for the Mars One reality show that would send humans to Mars. So I think that is the biggest difference that I've had, where 20 years ago, I was baffled when people thought that we shouldn't live on Mars. And now I'm like, no, I don't think we should live on Mars. So I would say that is the one that I've had the greatest change in my perspective on. And then I would say the other one, which has also sort of grown in me since then, is my perspective on how we're probably alone in the universe. And again, it's just my opinion. This is the thing that I've changed my mind about. I always say I'm a journalist. I don't have opinions. These are the two things that I do have opinions about, because basically they're philosophical questions or economic questions. They're not a scientific question. I mean, are we alone in the universe? This is a scientific question, but we don't have enough information to give a scientific answer, so we have to give more of a philosophical answer. So yeah, I would say those are the two. And if you've been like following my work, I don't know, from the beginning, or like listening to me on Astronomy Cast, if you listen to early episodes of Astronomy Cast, you will hear me wide-eyed excited about the human exploration of Mars. And then you will just hear me become more, I would say, more realistic, but you might say more jaded about it over time to where I am today. And it's still a fine line that I have to walk to balance my raw enthusiasm for space exploration with the reality of how difficult it is and how underinvested humanity has made this so far. That we can't have the gleaming city on Mars if we don't put in the investment, and we do not put in the investment. We haven't done all of the stuff that you would expect a civilization that is obsessed with sending humans into space. We have done the things that a civilization that is just trying to skate on by would put in. It's time to shout out all the new $5 patrons and above: Bart Grantham, John Golden, Donna Palmieri, Keith Williamson, Greg B., James Bosley, James T., Kevin McCauley, Jim Bob 82, and Glenn Anderson. Join the club at patreon.com/universe today. Did you know that you can watch the same video with no ads and get a bonus question over on Patreon completely for free? We call it Q&A Plus. And this week's bonus question: how do we know that telescopes are actually taking pictures? And I'll put a link in the show notes. All right, I hope you enjoyed the question. Now, as always, go ahead and put any questions that you have into the YouTube comments. We're back doing the live shows every Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific time. So if you want to join that live stream, there should be an event here on the channel for the next one. I'm going to bring you up to speed on what I am watching, playing, reading. But first, I'd like to thank our patrons. Thanks to Abe Kingston, Andrea Pedretti, Brian Bodie, Karen, Chuck Hawkins, Commander Bailock, Dark Finga, David Gilton, David Matz, Enthralled Reading and Math for Toddlers, Eric Lindstrom, Evan.Pro, James Clark, Jerry Mattern, Jim Burke, Jordan Young, Marcel Smits, Michael Purcell, Nordspace, OneStepForAnimals.org. Please follow my nephew at VBrick6994, Ring Kivey, Richard Williams, Sean Sargent, Stephen Falamoney, Team 49, Teleslips Canada, Vlad Chiplin, Wolfgang Klotz, and Zeldaborg Galactic Defender, who support us at the Master of the Universe level, and all our patrons. All your support means the universe to us. So every month or so, I like to bring you up to speed on all of the media that I am consuming, and I didn't get a chance to watch a lot while I was gone for the last 2 weeks, but there's still a lot of stuff that I am staying on top of. So the first one is For All Mankind, and this is the 5th season, and I had originally put For All Mankind on my top 10 best sci-fi shows ever. And I think the first couple of seasons definitely hold. This season has been soft, very weak. I described it as like a lot of people just walking around in corridors talking, and not the thrilling sci-fi risk, danger, space exploration, conflict that I had been hoping for. The last couple of episodes definitely upped the game, and so I would say the end of the season is kind of starting to recover it, but I have been underwhelmed by season 5 of For All Mankind. But what are you supposed to do? You have to keep watching it. This is the deal. But apparently the spin-off, Star City, is really good. I haven't watched it yet, but I'm about to begin. So these are on Apple TV. Of course, we're back with Rick and Morty season 9, and the first episode was great. I loved it. I haven't watched the second episode yet, but I'm sure by the time you're watching this, I will have watched the second episode. But Rick and Morty still has it. For reading, I think I had mentioned about a month ago that I reread Dune, and it is still like the best science fiction book ever written. It is the whole package. And I had never really made my way through the rest of the Dune books, and so I decided that I was going to do this. And a lot of people have said, just don't bother. You tried to talk me out of this, and I understand. So I read Dune Messiah, and I am almost through Children of Dune, and I'm going to keep going. And I know some of you would rather that I don't, that it may ruin my entire experience of the first book. And that's fine. I mean, this is the mind of Frank Herbert, and I'm determined to get through the end. And it's getting weird, but I'm okay. And who knows? After I've read that, maybe I'll go back and read the ones by his son and some of the other stuff. It's a little more standard, but man, the rest of the books sure feel like drug hallucinated weirdness. Anyway, Dune. Playing RimWorld again. I love RimWorld. So I just been watching a bunch of tutorials on YouTube and decided I was going to start backing up on RimWorld. And the new season of Path of Exile 2 has just dropped, and it looks like it's a banger. And I'm about to play, but it's so much energy, so much work, so much time, and yet it's so much fun. So I will probably, by the time you're watching this, have rolled a new character in Path of Exile 2, and I will start playing that as well. But as always, let me know what you are watching, reading, playing. I need the medias. Let me know what you're watching so that I can watch it too. All right, we'll see you next time.